from what I can tell, it's about 4 years.
4 years. Okay.
4 years of collected writings and things from different places.
Okay. All right. Because it's first of all, it's a big book, as I said to you, but it's also a very substantial book. So you have from very beautiful poetry to love letters from you to the Great Mother. You know, there's so much stuff. And I think that this was I mean, I have the kind of almost like the impression that this is almost like a cathartic, it was a cathartic, almost a cathartic process to you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Robin Artisson. Welcome to On the Black Chair. He's sitting on the black chair right now, and we're beginning our talk. Is it a black chair? Maybe it isn't. Maybe it is.
Black chair.
Yeah.
A black
the
chair.
Black Chair, yeah. So we're going to talk about your latest book, Robin. We're going to talk about Letters from the Devil's Forest, and this is, as you were told to me, as you can tell, it is a 4-year kind of work, accumulation of work. And I was telling you that the first impression that I had about this was that this was not only things, you know, reflections that you had, rants. Some of them are rants. It's like, how dare they telling me that, blah, blah, blah. Then there's a couple of love letters that you write to either spirits or to nature or to the Great Mother. I mean, there is so much in this book that it's incredible. I mean, I don't even know. You call it an anthology, right, of writings on traditional witchcraft, spiritual ecology, and permanence traditionalism, but it's just so much. Then the other thing, I'm just so psyched about this. The other thing is the fabulous illustrations of Stephanie Hauser, which are incredible, right?
They are.
It's just incredible. Now, how, and I'm very, very, very excited also from the last time that we talked. This is your own publisher, isn't it? Or you went away from your last publisher and you just said, okay, let's just do this. So how did that come about?
Well, Pendrake Publishing is, I still consider them to be my publisher. Okay. Peter Patton's he's a great man with a great vision, and I'm very pleased with everything he's done with my works. When Caroline and I met, I had no idea that we would actually, start producing books. I was working for a long time on what was supposed to be my next book, which, of course, naturally, as soon as I do finish it, I'm going to give it straight to Peter because it's really his, too. But this sort of happened, I guess, with the move, because I just left the South and moved back to Maine. And the big transitional period my life was in, I kind of fell into kind of a writer's block. Not really a block. I have tons to say, but I was running out of time to say it, and a lot of other things were sort of taking up my energy, whatever. But Caroline came along, and, she's great. She's very... I don't know how to put it. Where do I start on Madame St. Clair? She's I
just love the love the name. It reminds me somewhere in Paris in the 19th century. You know what I mean? It's just this wonderful, beautiful woman sitting in the very velvet red chair. It's just this beautiful dress.
Yeah, I think that about sums it up. But she's very busy, and she does a lot of work. She motivates me without being pushy. So, this happened. She pointed out, you have all these writings lying around. Why not just put them out there? And once she got that floodgate opened, more started coming out. So, Black Malkin Press, she and I's little imprint, is just sort of it's just she and I's thing. I could use the extra productivity and the motivation here at the beginning of this new life in Maine. It's a beautiful, wonderful place. But no, Peter Patton and his Pendrake Publishing, they're definitely my heroes. And my next Grimoire work, my next work specifically about sorcery.
Yeah.
Of course, would be.
Wait, we're losing you, Robin. Hold on. We're losing you for somehow we're losing you. Whoops. Did we lose you? No, we didn't. Okay, go ahead. Sorry. You said that your next work will be a grimoire.
Yes, Yes, absolutely. The next work not published through our Black Malcontent Press imprint, the one I'm going to give to Peter and Pendrake, it is actually Grimoire. Very serious work. I've been putting a lot of time and effort into it, and I think, well, I don't want to talk about it right now, but it'll make an impression.
Oh, I'm sure it will. All right, so let's just talk about this fabulous book that you have. I mean, this is just very thick work. You going through the index, or the contained herein, as you call it. It's just incredible. You have you touched a couple of things. You have parts that you divided this book into. And ladies and gentlemen, this book is just over 3 pages, over 700 pages. So it's a big book, but it is a substantial book. You have material here that, it will make you think for the next 5 years. The other thing is that you have a part 1 that it's about the fateful forces, the soul, dreams, and death, and then you have part 2, the strangest art, which is witchcraft, sorcery, and divination. I'm going to kind of go and pick some of the texts, and we're going to talk a little bit about them. We don't have much time. We have 1 hour. Right now, 53 minutes. But what I want to ask you, I'm going to begin to do a little bit of an introduction here about your introduction. You say here, and this is very, very controversial, of course. You say here, and I'm going to quote you on this, even in my own first writings on the topic of witchcraft, they are intertwined, and we're talking about something else, what modern Wiccans called witchcraft, between quotes, amounts to almost nothing beyond the veneration of a god, between quotes, and a goddess, between quotes, and fertility rites directed towards them. It is a very religious craft, if it's anything. Now, my question is, for all of the Wiccans out there that are listening to us, if there are any, did you ever went to a traditional Wiccan rite, meaning, and we're talking about a Gardnerian rite or an Alexandrian rite, did you ever went into one?
I did. Of course, Wiccans will argue about who is traditional and who is not, and I largely agree with them, because they have the power to say, within their own boundaries, who is and who is not traditional. When I lived in New Orleans, I met a gentleman who was Gardnerian. He was a controversial figure himself, but he was one of what they called the hard guards, and he was really all about, if you want to claim to be Gardnerian or a high priest or whatever, where's your paperwork, where's your pedigree papers? And he had his, and he was very proud of them, and I respected him. I really did. He believed it, he did, and what he did, of course, was very impressive. I never participated in one of his rituals, but I did know, before I knew him, a young lady who was a part of a tradition from the Ozarks, the Ozark Mountains. They called themselves the Majestic Wicca tradition. I'm not very aware of the history of the Majestic tradition, but she was some sort of high priestess. What she did was very, very similar to what I knew about Gardnerian and Alexandrian Wicca, and she was no fluff bunny. She was also very serious. And I did attend several of her rituals when I was a much younger man.
This is very interesting, Robin, because when I read your things, and when I read your texts and your reflections, and you're talking about spirits, and you're talking about pacts with spirits, and you're talking about the unseen, and all of these things, right, and all of these practices that you do, and how you do it, and you need to do this in order to, you have to have a relationship with the unseen. It is not possible if you don't do that. Traveling, flying, all of these things that you talk about. They are very much practiced in Alexandrian. I'm not a Gardnerian, so I have no clue whatsoever what they do. I can imagine that because I'm an Alexandrian and we hived from them, so I think that might be very similar. But I think that Alex actually brought a couple of other things that I don't know where he got it, but they resonate with you, and it's very interesting. Or what with the material that you have, and it's just it's just my curiosity. It was that, I just wanted to know, do you really have to actually happen to be in one of the rituals? Because what you actually talk about, was pretty much done by Alex. When you talk about spirits, when you talk about pacts with spirits, when you talk about, familiars, when you talk about all of these things, creations of spirits and creating, there's a whole lot of things that Alex did that it does really resonate with this, which is very interesting. Now, the other thing that you talk about was the 10 days before your 23rd birthday. What happened then?
Well, that would be the day that I consciously identified with the non-human person that I consider to be my primary familiar spirit.
That's right. And how did that happen? I mean, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think with most life-changing events of that nature, it came about because forces greater than me brought it about. If you know how it goes. I mean, when I became a father the first time, when I saw my first daughter born, that was a very life-changing experience. And obviously, to witness birth, to see all that happening, I mean, you get the feeling that you're standing in the hands of greater powers.
Yeah.
I have taken a lot of time over the years to talk about the concept of fate. So sometimes when we face things that are just too huge, I suppose a poetic word like fate is about the best period we can put at the end of that sentence. I had spent a good 2 years of effort attempting to forge the relationship that I finally got with that spirit. Of course, I didn't know that this particular non-human person, this spirit, was going to be in this relationship with me. But I asked the unseen, through the agency of the mighty person I call Master in this book, to arrange that meeting, to make me conscious of this deep strand of relationship in myself. And about 2 years later, that finally happened.
It's just very interesting because you talk about this little master, which is, of course, you're familiar, and this relationship with this. And then again, Robin, I had to go to Alex on this. He had a spirit also that was always with him. He had a familiar always with him, and it just seems so the same not material, but the same wavelength. You know what I mean? It's very interesting to see these things happening. These parallels.
No,
it really is.
I have studied into the life of Alexander's a good bit. I'm actually very impressed with how eccentric he actually seemed, because I recognize in his eccentricities, I recognize them as a person who was touched on some level by sorcerous powers. I mean, by the unseen world. And he was definitely a gateway sort of gentleman. There can be no doubt. I mean, a gateway between this world and another. He and Gardner really couldn't be two more different gentlemen. I mean,
yes, that's right. Yes.
So the Alexandrian family of Wicca clearly bears the hallmarks of its great father. And I don't know much about it, but I will say I owe something to Alexander's, something very, very important. When I was a very little boy, my own mother had a fascination when she was a teenager with the occult. And so by the time I was a little boy, a few of her leftover books were still on the shelves in the library of the home that I grew up in. And one of the books was a book by June Johns, King of the Witches, which was about Alexander. Yes. And so, I mean, I'm like an 8 or 9 year old boy flipping through the pages of this book quite excitedly, and there's pictures of Alexander's and Maxine, and and it was it was one of the signpost books that pointed the 8 and 9 year old me towards the existence of that world, that witching world that's out there. So I actually owe a lot of my initial interest to Alexander's doing what he did, and so that this book would come to be.
That's incredible. That's very interesting. Now let's go into the book. Very difficult, Robin. Very, very difficult. I said this to Madame Sinclair. I just said to her, it's really difficult to pick, these things. So I'm going to pick, okay, and then we're going to talk about this. I'm not going to go into order or anything. We can just go back and forth, and that's fine. One of the things that I want to talk to... go ahead.
I just want to make one more quick statement.
Ahead.
You mentioned that the quote you made from me in the introduction, you said it was kind of controversial. Yes. I want people to know that my characterization of Wiccan witchcraft as a very religious form of craft, devoted religiously to a god and a goddess figure, and with that definite fertility aesthetic, I don't consider that to be some kind of bad thing.
You don't say that, no.
I mean, I might consider...
You don't even say that on the text.
I would consider... The local intolerant Baptist minister and, ISIL in Syria and Iraq, I consider them bad. That's the family of religion I don't want to be around. I wouldn't mind it if a bunch of people who want to pray to a god and a goddess wanted to dance in the field next to my house. I would see that as a sign of a better world.
That's good. And it's really, you don't say that in the book. You don't really say that. You just say that it's religious and it lacks that fusion between sorcery and religion. That's what you say. You just kind of like you just said. You say, should the power of religion and that of sorcery be so combined? So that's what So you really don't really say, oh, it's bad, or you just said that.
Well, it's an important thing, though. A lot of people come to traditional witchcraft looking for less of a religious structure and more of a practical sorceress one. And I think some of this stuff I write might be as popular as it is, specifically because of the practical sorcery element minus the more religious elements. I mean, you can't separate these two things. They are extremely melded together. I realize that, but I don't know. Witchcraft means so many things, especially historically.
Yeah, that's true.
And a lot of people, when you ask them about witchcraft these days, will just tell you, "Oh yeah, it's those people that worship that god and that goddess." And that's it's a little bit.
It's really not. It's really not what it. What? I don't know. I call it. But this is words, right? You call this traditional witchcraft. And of course, I called what I do traditional Wicca, not because it's referring to the first forms of Wicca, and I'm referring to Gerald Gardner, of course, and Alex, and because there's so many Wiccas today that you just need a little word to distinguish you from whatever other people are doing. And so, going back to that, you just you wrote on part 2, and I have to the strangest art, aid from the Orbital, and there is the Orbital is it's something that it's very interesting because it's an ancient work, and not ancient, but from the Middle Ages. But you say it is very old, but still you say. From the Middle Ages was a school of hermetic sorcerers, and when I read this, it's like, wow, sort of sources. Anyway, you say. So, what is this? What can you tell us about the Orbital? Because this is really interesting. This is a piece that I thought, well, this is something really, very, very interesting. A school, you say, of hermetic sorcerers. There's a lot of stuff in the Orbital, right? And then you say, well, there's pieces of things from that school.
Well, the Orbital is a grimoire from the Middle Ages, obviously. And from what I understand, from what I remember in my researches on it, it may have been produced by a specific group of people who were practicing a form of high magic or sorcery at that time in the Middle Ages. But when I call them hermetic sorcerers, I mean to say that something of the literal magic of Hermes, the classical Greek and Roman and Egyptian and the forms of magic, patterns, structures of magic, made it into Europe, especially by the Middle Ages and in the time of the Renaissance, Corpus Hermeticum and things like that. These things were transmitted through the intellectual life of Europe, as the church gradually loosened its bans on what books could be read or owned or seen outside of its arms. There were definitely groups of people who, inside of a dominant Christian metaphysic, of course, we're dealing with some old, sometimes very, very potent, sometimes unregenerate forms of sorcery from the pre-Christian world. They don't appear to be witchcraft in the sense I mean it, but they are certainly, as in the Orbital, they are certainly attempting to communicate with and tame occult powers for directed ends. And that particular school that created the Orbital, what makes the Orbital stand out to me just was that the first part of it wasn't just a bunch of charts and diagrams, with a bunch of invocations like you get in the Keys of Solomon. The first part of it was actually a collection of little wise sayings and aphorisms and kind of occult knowledge statements, one of which was impressed me so much I had to write that little short piece in the book.
Yes. It's just so incredible that you just got into the Orbital and how you all of these texts that you have here are just they're unique, they're very deep, there are reflections either from you, there are sometimes messages. For instance, the next one that I want to talk about, it's Falling Through the Sky, Mastery in Sorcery. And I like the way that you actually wrote this, because you were talking about the tarot, and no, that's the game of divination. But we're talking about the mastery in sorcery, and you say these days, and this is what I quote: "These days, as my last major success in a work taught me, mastery is not about the plan or the ritual work or even the poetry." What is mastery, Robin, for you?
Mastery is sort of a realization of how much you have left to learn, how much you have left to do, how flexible you need to be. There's just really no such thing in a world seen or a world unseen as big and infinite and immense and complex as this one. For two thing I brought in Maine here in a few live seminar. I've never done a seminar before, but we're going right into it, and we're very excited about it.
We're good.
I'm terrified. I'm terrified that these 10 great people are going to show up to our rustic lodge in the countryside expecting to find, some kind of grandmaster authority, like I'm some kind of guru or something that they're coming to see. Yeah, I'm really, really afraid. I'm really afraid of that. Mastery is massive openness and flexibility and the ability to shift one's shape at will, which means on one level, that means to be able to change your thinking or to be flexible with things that hurt or things that you like. Mastery it's not really humbleness. It's not humble to admit what's absolutely true, that the world is immense and it's very complex and many forces come to bear in any given situation. And there's no way that we can control this world in some great organized manner like we're trying to do, and you can't control your spirituality or your emotional world in that way either. Yeah. So masters are people that know how to skim the waves, stay afloat, make progress, and their motion is just very smooth. They're not encumbered by all these strange ideas that other people are encumbered by.
Everything is very organic, isn't it? I mean, you can't really...
There's a lot of people out there. There's people out there that say that not everything is organic. They try to put the organic world down here, and then there's this grand intellectual world of strange forms way, way up there. And, it's funny, I've never actually encountered any of those. I mean, we have only ever lived in this organic environment which shaped everything about our bodies. I mean, everything we experience, it somehow has a correspondence in the organic world. Yeah. I mean, this is reality. We're looking to our imaginations for something we think is above reality, but everything's organic in that sense.
Absolutely. Now, Fate and the Sacred Game of Divination. This is another one that you have here that I looked at. Again, all of these fantastic illustrations by Stephanie Hauser, and it's just incredible.
She is incredible. Stephanie is incredible, and I have a great treasury of artworks that she has done for me. And I used very few, comparatively speaking, in letters. Most of the work she did for me are going to appear in the Grimoire I talked about earlier, and they are amazing. I've shown a lot of them on Facebook, but they are very great. She's very great, and and we're very, very proud about that.
Now, you talk about divination here, and it's very interesting because you surprised me, because you talked about as a master tarot diviner, and you say that your tarot, in a million years, I wouldn't even thought that you would be using tarot. I would think.
Really?
Oh yeah, I would think that Robin Artisson would use some kind of oracle that would not be remotely related to tarot. But then I read the text and I understood why, and that has everything to do with it. What is these very you got a little thing here that it's very interesting that I want to read. You say, just so as a master tarot diviner, a connoisseur of sortilege in the old sense, I must insist to my clients, you aren't here to parse out the well-kept secrets of fate's world-spanning story. That story is told by fate with her well-hidden hands and well-kept by the same. You're here for a strange game indeed. Now, what do you mean by this? What do you understand as being fate? When you're reading or doing this, you don't say reading, you say something else. But when you're telling this story to your client, when you're saying, is it really a choice? Is there any choice? Can they make a choice about their destiny or not? And is destiny choice? Can you make a choice about destiny? What do you think?
If we really knew what part we played in everything, then I guess it's just theoretically possible that choice, in the sense most people mean it, might be possible. But it brings me back to the Oracle of Delphi,
yes.
In ancient Greece, where people would go to Apollo's oracle and ask these important questions. And the oracle was often cryptic. But there's a famous story of a particular gentleman who was facing a great war, and he wanted to know how it's going to turn out. You know the story. The oracle told him a great empire would fall. And he assumed that just meant the other side's empire, so off he went, and he lost everything. Well, if he knew if he knew what role he played in the story of the world, that probably wouldn't have really happened to him. Fate, when I use the term these days, I'm using it to refer. It's got several shades of meaning, but I mean it to refer to the grouping of most hidden, most fundamental powers that shape, history, that make things happen in our world. There's so many things that are so very important to us in our individual lives that we totally didn't choose. I mean, the events that happen and shape us, and our personalities are completely just owe everything to these events, and yet, we didn't ask for them, we didn't expect them. So that quality of our experience, I kind of assign to fate. And with tarot, when people, are attempting to use divination, I think I gave an example in the book of the man, who didn't walk off the cliff and die. Isn't that the story I used?
Yes, so a man is walking down a road directly towards an unseen and deadly drop-off. Just before he reaches it, another man yells out to him, warning him about the invisible cliff he's heading towards. The man stops, turns around, walks another way. He doesn't fall. He doesn't die. So this is what you begin, this is
right.
Where you begin to, and then you take this story and then you kind of do the parallel here about the tarot and the fate and death, and the man's fate of death was averted by the warning and decision he made to heed the warning. You make this question, is in the story you said I told above, you weren't seeing the story about a man fate to die by falling. We're seeing the story about a man who was fated to be warned of a fall and heed the warning. That's all.
Right. Right. It's a bit of a mind bender.
Yeah, it is. That's what it is. He was not meant to fall. He was meant to actually be warned about it and make a decision that he didn't actually fall.
There is a recent pop culture parallel to this. There's a very excellent TV show called Salem, which just came out.
Do you like it?
I do like it. I like it very much.
Yes.
It's,
Me too.
And I don't even say that like it's a guilty pleasure. I mean, I think it's a really good show.
Me too. But there's a whole uprising against it, and especially from Salem itself. But anyway, so
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine. If I lived in Salem, if I lived there, you know why I would have an uprising against the TV show? Because of the fact that we're all expected to enjoy this TV show set in Old Salem, as long as we make sure to remind ourselves that it looks nothing like a forest near Shreveport, Louisiana.
Yes, that's right.
That's my only problem with it. I mean, I live in Maine.
Please,
I live in Maine.
Yeah,
here.
couldn't you please film this in Maine? I don't know, New England.
There are so many beautiful places around here, which would have been so much more suitable. But Louisiana wisely gives enormous benefits and tax breaks.
I'm sure
and
it
other
does.
Financial
Absolutely, I'm sure it does. Yeah, and that was why.
Well, anyway, in that show, there was this extremely important scene where our chief witch lady tells one of her little apprentices that getting what you want in life is not really that hard. Knowing what you want is very hard. Mm-hmm. And that has stuck with me ever since I saw it, because of course she's completely correct.
Yeah.
But there's something about that what she said there, and then the tarot reading thing. You know, when a person comes to me, usually for tarot readings, they're wanting to know if they're going to get something they're after or what's going to happen with something. But they very seldom, and not many people really, have stopped amid the busy business of life to look inside themselves and see if what they want might not be the problem. So when a person falls into that kind of way of living, which I think is most people, it's like there's a terrible fate just making things happen to them over and over again that they can't escape. But what if the purpose of them being at that tarot reading wasn't to find out if something was going to happen, but to realize that they had no idea what it is they really wanted to happen? I mean, it changes the game. It brings it to a new level.
Yeah. It is almost like doing it or looking at it in a three-dimensional, isn't it? When you have looked at it all through these years, in a bi-dimensional kind of way. Now, there's so many. I mean, we have like 27 minutes. I'm just like freaking out because I have a 700 book in front of me. Okay, pages. Forming the Witch Covenant is something that I want to talk about because there is a listener here on the chat room that is asking you a question, which is really, really cool. And I want you to answer that question because it's a nice question. But there is the strangest art is the part that you talk about, this part too. And there is a text that it's called Forming the Witch Covenant. And this is actually something that someone wrote to you, right? And they ask, how can I form a coven of the old craft, or according to the old craft parameters? And then it's just your answer to it, and it's really, really. I mean, it goes to this show, doesn't it? Almost. The Salem show, because and it's just incredible. So tell us very briefly what is really, really important here. You talk about non-human persons of the master himself. You talk about a lot of there should be a dream dialogue between all of the covenanters. There's this whole thing happening in a different level that people don't really realize that it. And I think that this show Salem, sorry, but I have to make the reference, really kind of points to it, doesn't it? Because all of the Sabbath, when you see the Sabbath, scenes, which everything is actually happens not really in the level of the physical, but in a dream, or I don't know what to call it, but it would be almost like astral. I don't want to call it astral, but you know what I mean. So it's a different level. You call it dream level, right? You call it a dream. When they fly and they go into. So, what is it really most important in forming a witch covenant?
Well, relationship with the unseen world is the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's a human group effort to create extraordinary relationships with existing and living
non-human persons, powers, spirits, whatever you want to call them. But as you see in Salem, again, to keep your example going, it's not always very extremely pleasurable and happy. There's a certain burden that those witches feel when it comes to the commitments they have to the helpers of their coven, to the forces that stand behind their society. So there is that aspect of it, which is, I find, very realistic. But the most important, the core of it, is that humans have made relationships with non-humans, and between the two, some kind of benefit is generated for this world, and some sort of benefit is generated for the unseen world. And if you look at the most famous, arguably the most important historical witch we know, Isabel Gowdy.
Ooh, I was going to go there.
Yeah, well, we need to go there, because so much of her life is so very important, and Emma Wilby's book about her is just beyond belief. If you look at Isabel's covenant, Isabel had a covenant. She worked on what you call the dream level, in that trance state, in the astral state, in the unseen world. She worked with other people who lived near her in Scotland, and they were not just getting together to appear in visionary states or to dance with little devils in the woods. They were doing something. They had a job to do. Their covenant had a task. It was a death divination covenant. They came to know, through their participation with potent forces in the unseen world, they came to know who was going to die before they died. They understood which members of their community were going to perish, and when, and sometimes how. This was an important service in a lot of pre-modern societies. It's something we don't know much about now, but it just pops up in our legends and in our lore, but in, whispered, kind of out-of-the-way places. But Isabel's covenant was a death divination covenant. The unseen world gave them this knowledge, and they participated in what it was doing. Their helpers, their familiars, gained something from these humans coming across and temporarily becoming sort of like non-humans themselves. The unseen world really seems to like that sort of stuff. The unseen world and the beings that live in it, they appear to want to visit us, and they appear to want us to visit. I mean, I'm not sure if anyone knows why, except that the nature of reality is exchange. The nature of reality is communication. Power passes from one place to another and passes again and then again. Either way, to me, the core of covenant is relationship with the unseen. It can't be just about the witches. Relationship with just the seen world, well, if you want that, you can go to the Rotary Club or join the Masons or something. I don't know. It's very... I mean, the Masons have their own strain of esotericism, but it's very slight these days. There's lots of secular clubs and communities you can join, if you want that, but a witch covenant is something that's very ominously deep and extraordinary when it's created, when it arises.
I don't know who is the person who's giving advice for that series, but they certainly have a lot. I really do believe that they know what they're saying. Actually,
yeah, there's definitely something going on there. I'd like to find
out. So you do have what I called your love letter to Isabel Goldie, and that is part 2 on the strangest art. You call it the Magistra, and it's all about Isabel. And you talk again about the visions of Isabel Goldie, the Emma Wilby book, which is an incredible book, and how you actually really, I mean, you just summed it up. I mean, you just talked about it. I mean, I was going to go there, but of course, But now, how did the question here from it's called Pao Pao Kim. I think I don't want to be. I have, people have to understand that this is my second language. Pao Pao Kim, she says, I would appreciate Robin explaining via his new book how he has prepared himself and experimentally experiences spirits of the land, and how they might have responded to him, if he can, or how they might have influenced this new book. one of the most ancient things is the spirits of the land. I mean, and I'm sure that when you moved from the south to here, you had to do that rebuild of relationships again with the spirit of Genie Loki, right? Like they call it. Would you talk a little bit about this for Pau Pau Kim, so that she had or he?
Sure.
I don't know if it is Pau Pau Kim. Yeah,
sure.
Go ahead.
Well, first off, let me say that moving is very atrocious. Moving is very hard.
Yeah.
Okay? And the reason why, and there's really an underlying spiritual reason why moving is very hard. Because when you live in a place long enough, even if you are just the most, shallow, disaffected, least spiritual person on planet Earth, you don't even believe that there might be spiritual forces inside the land that you live on, which you are communing with at the soul level every day. Even if you don't believe that, that happens, okay? A place affects you, and a place affects you on multiple levels. A lot more of your own personal daily feelings and emotions and moods and even your physical health is affected by where you live than anyone realizes, okay? So when you move, it's like dying. You uproot yourself from this network of subtle force, which you have become very familiar and comfortable with. And for a brief time, you're between one place and the next, just like dying. You're a free-floating ghost with, old connections severed and heading towards new connections, towards new relationships. And until you gain those new relationships, things just don't feel right. The world is upside down. It's a hard time. It's very challenging. I just did it, and Madame St. Clair also just moved, incidentally. And establishing myself as a conscious participant in the unseen life of this place has been my first goal. And for months, I have been doing it. And the hardest part about it is that when you start to establish yourself as a friend to the spiritual forces that dwell in an area, is that you can't hurry. They have to see you. They have to watch you. You can't actually reach out to them like you're some desperate person grabbing for a stable place in the middle of the storm of the world. You can't do that. That would be almost, I believe, offensive to them or bothersome. You'd seem like a crazy, desperate person. You just kind of have to be quiet for a while and go about your life in that place and let them observe you. And I did that for going on over 3 months here, and only very recently. So I'm glad that Papa Kim asked that question. Only very recently have I started to really engage the non-human persons that live here, and it's been an extremely intense time for me. I'm very excited about it. I wish I could say more about it. It's something I'm definitely going to talk about at the seminar. But this place is very different from where I came from. It's just like the forces here are more obvious somehow because this place is wilder and quieter. And I'm not saying that they're eager for relationship, but they respond to human kindness. They respond very well to a person who just has a simple and kind heart and who just wants to be their friend. It's very, very powerful. And to an extent, I suppose, Letters from the Devil's Forest was written under the influence of another land. I lived somewhere else. But I found forces there that were willing to work with me, willing to deal with me. And you can find that anywhere if you're patient enough and if your heart is strong enough. You said at the beginning of this little talk that the book seemed cathartic at times. And I guess I never stopped to even really think about it before you said that. But I was really living in a somewhat difficult, challenging time over the last 4 years because I just started my career as a professional psychotherapist, and I was working in a specific form of therapeutic engagement with the community that's really known for its high stress level. And I realized that a lot of these things that I wrote, which later became chapters and things and Letters from the Devil's Forest, they often were written under the influence of me needing to completely vent and be cathartic. So there's a lot of truth to that. But the forces of the land, though, the place forces, the place spirits where I were, yes, they had a lot to do with quite a few of the things that are in that book.
Yeah. Now, we have 15 minutes to go into one of the strangest, not strangest, I should say controversial texts, I guess, and I'm going to read it. You will know exactly what I'm talking about immediately.
Okay.
It says, healing and cursing or unfettering or binding, any of these standard acts can affect someone else until you absorb and endure the entire power of them. Until they change you, transform you, make you free, make you suffer, or whatever. It stands in contradiction to the ordinary and lamed, between quotes, magical moralities that insist on, between quotes, boomerang effect of magic. What you send out, between quotes, they say, open quotes, come back to you this way or that. Now, we're talking about a text on your wonderful book, Letters from the Devil's Forest. It's entitled Hex, the Outer Hex Oneself. So we're talking about all of these things that, particularly Wiccans in general. I'm not talking about anyone in particular, but in general. Threefold law, law of the return, all of these things that, you send one, it comes back three. There's this whole math, about it. But the fact is that you say, not really. Why?
Well, that law of threefold return is something that I had a long-standing grudge with. And from what I understand, even a person as important to the Wiccan movement as Doreen Valiente, I think she also kind of ended up having a few issues with it philosophically. I brought this up to the gentleman I told you about in New Orleans, the Heart Guard. And he actually really helped me to understand that in a new way. He talked about scourging, and he talked about how at some point in some ritual engagement, a person is basically shown through the use of a scourge that something that, that you do, when it's reapplied to you, it's to your advantage to do it lightly if it's going to hurt, because someone's going to come and do it to you 3 times. So, if you just kind of lightly tap someone, then your 3 taps will be light, and that made more sense to me. in the sense of consequences being attached to our actions. Hex oneself was about this very mystical idea that I think Carl Jung was the first person I ever saw talk about it. That when someone summons something up from the unseen world, or even from the unconscious, the first place it has to go is obviously you. I mean, you're the agency that it finds its birth through. So, and this is true with sorcery, and this is why I tell people, and I'm very paranoid about this. If you are going to try to engage harmful forces for whatever reason, that you should never ever do it at where you live. Especially not if you have a family. This is the kind of thing you go far away to do. And that's extremely, extremely important, because the first place it has to go is you, and everything about you is connected to you. The place where you live, the things you like, the people you love. So physically separating yourself, and even mentally separating yourself as much as possible from that, is very, very important. You know that when Isabel Gowdy went out to do the things that she and her covenant did, she often left a broom lying in her bed. Okay, and we are led to believe that this scarecrow broom she used was supposed to trick her husband into thinking that she was still there. Okay, now obviously, I hope her husband could tell her apart from a broom. I don't think anyone really believes that. That was a sorceress operation.
Yeah.
If she was supposed to be in bed at that hour, this thing, this object that was sorcerously crafted to represent her, being left in the place she would ordinarily be, was a protection charm. If she was going to do something that was dangerous, it was confusing to those harmful powers. Well, she's here, but so who's that lying in her bed? On one level, it made things seem like it was just business as normal at her house, that she was still in bed and everything was still fine. It's the same thing, the same principle that a witch bottle works on. when you put your urine or your bodily fluids into this bottle, it makes a strange little psychic copy of you, a copy of your breath soul. So if a curse or a wicked power is looking for you, suddenly it's got to pick between you and this bottle. And it's like, whoa, wait, why are there two of them? It's confusing. Okay? And so, this is a very old sorcery, this whole, making copies of oneself to leave them places or use them. This is very, very old stuff. Okay? Harmful power. If you're going to invoke it for whatever reason, it's best that you do it away from the places where the people you love live or where your most important things are, because that's the last sort of association you really want to build or to create. But I think the purpose of that text in the book, though, was just to present an alternate view of magical morality. Everything's connected. So if you really want to harm something else, you're going to have to deal with that harm yourself. Because there is no, you can just stand aside from the rest of reality. Everything's connected, everything communicates.
Yeah, and you told that about the moving. Yeah, you told that net of continuous relationships and interconnectivity. It is very interesting what you're saying, because in Europe, and I'm not going to say where, but in Europe there is a lot of magic that it's, when you do work, oftentimes you go to a place that it's isolated, and you really don't, you leave your house. And of course, if it, they would say, well, she's cursing in a mountain. It's true, because she was. And oftentimes it would be, of course, they would say, oh, no, she's just kind of doing, a little retreat. Yeah.
Well, when you consider what Isabel did, this is where shape-changing magic comes back to play here. People love to quote her hair shape charm, her hair shape-shifting charm. I shall go into a hare with sorrow and such and mickle care. You know this. Everyone knows this by now. The fact that she was choosing to change into a hare, I will go as a hare. This is another way of Isabel perhaps distancing herself from the impact of what's about to occur. So she can't be held responsible on every level for something that just happened. Why, that hare did it.
Yes.
Isabel, she assumed Isabel's shape when she returned.
Yeah.
Okay? But while she's out working, while she's gone, she's going to work, she's going as a hare.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It's sort of,
no, absolutely. You end this very interesting text by saying, when considering what you want to do to the world and others with magic, understand that you are only considering what you want to do to yourself. We already do a plethora of unhealthy things to ourselves every day. This is no different. And like the unhealthy lifestyle choices we all make, this too is in the long run can drag you to ruin. And it is true. I mean, this is so, when people say, oh, well, I'm smoking, and I'm like, well, yeah. This is exactly, there's so much lifestyle options that you do in health-wise and all of that. Really? And you're kind of like worried about if you're actually, please. But it really, you know what I mean?
Well, this whole idea brings together the notion of practicality and sorcery. Everything exists together in the same space. Obviously, what I'm eating or how I'm exercising or not, or whatever, a sorcerer's choice, it's in that same space. I hate to think that people think, well, there's my mundane life way over there, and then there's my magical life over here. No. It's actually just one life. Sorcery is an extraordinary dimension of a life, but it's still part of that life. So that's what I was trying to get at.
Oh dear, because but isn't that so Christian? Isn't that so Christian? When people think, well, yeah, I'm Christian when I go to mass. And you know what I mean? So it's that kind of frame of mind, because it's like, okay, I'm going to the circle and I'm doing this ritual, and I'm and brothers and sisters and la la la, and then when you're not in the circle, you're just this horrible, there's no practicality whatsoever. And then they begin to be very, very amazed by all of this, practicality of traditional witchcraft when you have women working, in the mountains and making brooms to fool the forces. It's just so incredible. Robin, we have very, very little time. I want to ask you if you want to do a part 2 of this, because this book has so much to tell, and you have so much to tell about it. We didn't talk about your projects. I mean, you have this seminar that you have. It's incredible. You have a new seminar that's coming up. It's called Unsealing the Great Below. And it's a seminar in traditional metaphysics and true witchcraft, shedding light on the strange story of the lost soul, the trance art, and the old spiritual ecology underlying the first forms of sorcery practice in the Western world. And this will be in October 23rd to 26th, 2014. And then you have a second seminar now booking on November 14th to 16th, 2014. So this is for those of you, and I know that there are a lot of you who are going to this seminar. This is your opportunity, people. So sign up right away. Would you be willing to come back again to sit on the Blackchair for us?
It would be my pleasure, for certain.
Well, thank you so much for being here and for being with us and sharing your wisdom and your clarity about the unseen and the seen. We'll come back with you again on a part 2 of On the Blackchair with Robin Artisson. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you.